So today I'm joined by Sadek. He's the CEO and founder of Prismic, the CMS that we've talked about a lot on the channel. It's actually the first time that I had a collaboration outside of my own channel was with the Prismic team. We're going to talk about that, but Sadek, thank you very much for joining me on this conversation.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So I will give a little backstory of how I came to know you guys, and then I'll dive into asking you questions and diving into your story. I remember watching Prismic's podcasts way before podcasts was popular. I remember maybe the first thing that I see was 4 or 5 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a very long time ago that you started talking about, talking with folks in the industry, bringing new guests and, different technologies and representatives there. It was 5 years ago or so.
Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years
4 or
ago.
5. Yeah. And that was really interesting to me because back then I wasn't podcasts weren't as popular as what they are now. Especially in the tech domain, we didn't have any podcasts, and it was very interesting to see different guests that you were bringing in. I got to know a lot of people through that podcast. And after I started my YouTube channel talking about Next.js, I was invited by you guys to talk about Next.js on a live coding meetup. And that was quite an experience for me because I used to watch the podcast, used to watch the meetups with you guys, and it was a moment for me to realize, okay, I made it. I'm finding my space.
Yeah, so already the idea was that, Prismic is not on its own, right? We need a lot of things around it. We need a front-end framework. We need hosting. We need a lot of things, and getting our users to know the ecosystem is going to be good for them. And it's going to connect us with the right circles, right? That's the idea, and it has worked very well. The proof is that we got connected to you, and that we got you in there. And what you shared as experience was very relevant for the people that were developing with Prismic. So it worked quite well. A lot of people think of podcasts as marketing tools, which they are eventually, but they are, they build circles. You connect to the relevant circles, you do joint content with them, and that is of value for your users, your audience, whoever you're talking to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my experience has been exactly the thing that you have described. Maybe in the beginning, I wasn't thinking of it as a tool that allows me to connect to more people, to get in touch, to build my network, be talking to you right now. But this is absolutely the case. And there's a lot of things that happens in this conversations that I've had on the channel, mainly talking about or talking with the folks that have influenced me in some way or shape, or they're active in the industry. There are, sometimes we don't have a tech topic to talk about in the podcast, but there's so many things you can learn from a simple conversation because you get an insight to how that other person story has unfolded, or what they think about this, or where they're working right now. So I have used I've liked the podcast and interviews that I had, and I have learned a ton, and I hope it's the same for the audience. So yeah, that's how I got to know you guys through Prismic, the CMS. When I was working as a web dev, that was the first CMS that I started working with.
You're not the dev anymore, is that the case?
No, I am. I am, but I guess I do more things now. I do have projects that I still code. I still have freelance projects. I have consulting clients and stuff.
Yeah.
But when I started back then, that Prismic was the first CMS that I used. I learned, I dived deep inside. I wrote a blog post condensing everything that I have learned about Prismic and how to use it in Next.js. And it's a funny story because I created a video and that blog post, and folks in the comment kept telling me that this is such a good resource. You have to tell Prismic to include this somehow in their resources.
Okay.
Then I reached out to you guys and I said, I have made this video and this blog post, and folks are liking it. Maybe you want to share with the community.
Mm-hmm.
And that got into, I forgot who I talked to in your team, but they connected me to, I think, Alex, which is your DevRel guy. And then that led into,
Yeah, and
getting.
and that led to having you on our video. And actually, there are quite a few things that were very useful for in your workflow. You talked about your workflow, I remember, and there are a lot of things that were useful for how you set things up, how do you work, how do you break things into slices, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I remember that very well.
Absolutely. So yeah, I wanted to start with saying I appreciate the leading example that you've created in the industry for the podcasts, for getting people together, connecting people with one another, and obviously for having me on the channel. So thank you for that.
It was a mutual benefit.
All right, so I want to, for folks who don't know you, why don't we start from what you do now, and I want to also dial back the story to go back and see how you ended up here, but give us a little introduction in what it is that you do now.
So what is it that I do now? I'm the
Yes.
CEO of Prismic. What does that mean exactly? Well, a lot of things. There are a lot of versions of me that, year after year, I have to change. To grow a company, you have to grow yourself. You cannot be the same person and grow the company. So I used to be involved a lot in operations. Now it's more that I focus my time on the vision, on the direction, on certain structure and organization of the company. So that's what I spend my time on, which is very different than what I used to do, let's say, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, where I was very much involved in even coding a lot of bits of Prismic.
Do you miss coding?
Not really. I mean, I love coding. It's very, like the journey with coding was very interesting for me. I was like, so I'm this that kid that at school, probably until age of 13 or 14, I was excellent, but I was not doing much. It was like it made sense, and I like to understand things, and that helped me a lot. And starting with that age until I was 18, I was very average. And because I couldn't memorize things, it's like our system, education system, was very based on remembering texts and numbers and stuff, and I'm not so good at doing that. So my environment is, was a bit disappointed. Everyone around me, they thought that I'm that brilliant person that's always going to succeed, and I spent like 5 years of being just an average, like really average in everything. Even math, which I was very strong at, I started being very average at that. And my discovery was programming, which, so my dad, early on, he brought a computer. It wasn't a very old computer. It looked like a keyboard. You would connect it to a TV. It's a Sinclair Spectrum something. And he brought it. We started playing some games that don't exist, I guess. Today, a lot of people didn't even hear of them, like Jet Set and a few others. And then by accident, at some point, for some kind of bug, it opens the source code of the game. What is that? And it was very interesting, and I would start like trying to modify things and see what would happen. And I got
If
very
you can
interested.
unlock to the next level of the game.
or things start acting weirdly, mostly actually. So I didn't understand what I'm doing, but it was like, oh well, that doesn't look very good. but it was fun. And then I found this manual book. It was programming basic, and I was like, okay, let's try it. And I tried to do a few things, and it clicked, and it was very easy. And starting with that point, I restored my status being a smart person, I guess. I mean, people were like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I mean, programming clicked for me in some way because there is this abstract and patterns part to it that I really like. This is how my brain functions. Like it's all about patterns and finding patterns and things. So I had a lot of facility. I was saying all this story, all this story to say like I have some kind of uh, pattern of thinking that works very well with programming and had a lot of success with it. It was pretty easy for me to imagine anything in code. But then I had to move to other things. I had the responsibility, especially at Prismic, to manage other things. You know, you cannot just be coding. There is business, there is marketing, there is a lot. There is HR. But I find my way. I redefined. I think the same capacity that I had in programming, I found it in organizational and managerial topics. So that's why I'm still using the same capacity, but in a different way.
In a different way. Absolutely, it makes sense. I want to learn about like what's going on and how this story in Prismic and how it shaped and how you grow the company to this point. But let's backtrack to your start in programming. So you get curious about programming, you dive into dabbling around with the games and stuff. What happens after that? Like, how did you pursue that passion?
So it was very natural. There's something that I believe in strongly today. A lot of people tell you follow your passion, and some people doubt that. Some people say like you cannot just do that to succeed. And I have, went back and forth on this, but today I strongly believe in it because if you're running, for instance, to lose weight or to get in a good shape, and you have a discipline in running every day, I mean, a lot of times it will feel hard, and 30 minutes, 1 hour, and you start, is it done yet? Is it done? But for instance, I play badminton. Time goes so quickly. And I do a lot of effort. It's extremely hard, as a sport. It's very agile. There is a lot of, you know, uh, it's pretty intense as a sport, almost like boxing, but I don't feel any of that. I don't feel the pain. I don't feel very little of that effort, and time goes very quickly. And I think that's because passion makes that very positive. So I strongly believe in that, and programming has been a similar exercise. I wasn't counting hours. I would sit in the afternoon and play a little bit with code to figure things out. And it's funny, like us programmers, we get fun out of honestly stupid things. Like I got the computer to play some sounds. There were this instruction called beep, and you will make the computer just do random beeps, beep, 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 and I would be so happy. Wow, it's working. And it's not that it's rocket science, but it's satisfying that, and I keep doing it, and then you start doing some loops, and then okay, so I can repeat in a certain pattern and all of that. So that was very satisfying. And then my dad, he found that okay, well, that worked well, so he helped me. He found a person that knew a little bit about programming, started teaching me some a few things, and then I kind of stopped because I had to focus on school and get some good grades, which I didn't. So then my father didn't want me to stop there. I couldn't study engineering or computer science or anything because my grades were not so good. But he insisted, so he sent me to another country so that I can study, because in Syria I couldn't. I wouldn't be able with my grades to study anything related to engineering. The only thing I had is art, which I liked, but he understood that I'm passionate about programming, so he sent me to uh, Armenia actually for studying engineering, uh, computer engineering, and it was fun. It was any topic. It was like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. And then we learned about a lot of concepts binary programming, assembly, a lot of different topics, and it was pretty easy. Made sense. Everything made sense. So that's how I went into studying programming. And actually, I remember. So here's one interesting topic. So my dad sent me money, like it was like $600 to buy a computer, a PC, so that I can use it for my homework. And actually, I spent all of it. I didn't buy a computer. And I was in trouble because I needed to do some homework. So I would do the homework on paper. I would write the whole program on paper, completely, and I had to get it right because I didn't have any space, any time to kind of debug it. So it had to be correct.
Correct.
So I would go, and I would do it on paper, and then I present like 5 minutes before the lesson. I would go and write it on the machine in the university, and it had to run. I didn't have time, but I guess I learned programming in a weird way because I had to debug things in my head.
Before you actually hit the enter button, yeah, or
Yeah,
run the command.
before I see what it makes. And actually, I find it out in a lot of cases where we have a bug. I don't go and start like putting console messages or anything. I just look at the code for quite a few times, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's like, where could this effect come from? What could in this program make such an effect? And I say, here. And then, oftentimes it's that part that makes it.
Yeah. It's very interesting you say that because when you have this ability, even before it gets to debugging, when you are writing the code, you're thinking of all or most of the possible scenarios where things can go wrong and already implementing it in the way that you're coding because you have this capacity to zoom out and see and look at it before it happens.
And I have to be honest on this. Front end programming, it doesn't work this way. You cannot. It's so that's why I was much better at back end because front end you need to experiment a lot. You cannot just get things right. There are so many details to get something right that it cannot work by just sitting back and writing the whole program. That doesn't work.
And it also involves the user interaction where you might have an idea of how they interact, but then they do something else, and then you're like, oh, okay, that broke things.
And actually, that was one of the mistakes that I did in early Prismic, is that I assumed a lot about the user behavior, which was not the case.
Yeah, they just do completely different ways to,
And that's the thing is like when you have the solution, the UX solution, often it looks obvious, but it wasn't obvious before you learn it. That's, there are a lot of experiences like this where I discovered that way.
Absolutely. So you got to university, you studied computer engineering in Armenia. What happened next?
So I was done with my studies. I went back to Syria. I wanted so much to go to the United States. My sister is American, and I was like, okay, this is, in media, this is the dreamland. It's like the American dream and all. But then I had an opportunity to come to France instead, in Europe. And I didn't like France. I didn't like so much. I mean, I don't know, for some reason. Well, now I'm French and I'm Parisian. But yeah, back then it was not the first word. It was the second word. And I was like, I will not go from the third word to the second word. I'd rather go right away to the first word. That was my thinking back then. But I had an opportunity. I was like, okay, this is a pragmatic opportunity that I have, and I can seize it, and we see where it goes. And since then, it has been 20 years that I'm in Europe and in France.
All right. So you go to France, and did you start working there, or did you continue studying there?
So I studied 1 year of French language, very complicated, especially for a person like me. To me, there are two categories of people about languages. Some people are very easy at trying things out, so starting to try the vocabulary, even if they do a lot of mistakes. These people learn very quickly, very good. I'm the other category where I had to get things right, perfect, before starting to speak. Yes. And actually, it's the wrong way to go. but this is who I am. And it took me like 3 to 5 years to start speaking. Everyone around me would say like, but you can talk. I was like, no, I cannot talk. Stop saying that, please. And yeah, I couldn't. But eventually I started and I had a strong language. I started having a strong language, but it took me a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's funny you say that thing about how you are about using things, and I think it applies to all skills. And I'm exactly the same way. I cannot, like, if it is about the language, I have to say it correctly, or else I won't. And I feel like it's not even limited to that. It's about anything. I can't speak about stuff that I am, half knowledgeable about. I can only speak
Yeah.
if I understand something from ins and outs of it. Then
Yeah, and I understand, and but I'm working on it now. So I'm learning uh, to do some music on a machine. It's called Loop Station. You know what Loop Station? It's like
yeah, yeah,
you have 5 tracks. You record loops and then you
yeah,
put effects on them. And I do a few like small pieces of like few seconds, and I post it on Instagram.
yes,
and and I decided this time that I want to go easy. So like I don't know anything and it's okay. And when I listen to my things that there is this missing and that's not good and it's not good timing, but I say like yes, but publish it. It's okay.
yeah,
And I trust I will learn. My learning process is going to be good, and I will be eventually in a good place.
yeah,
And I'm fine to have partial results. It's a good exercise to force ourselves to have partial results, to fail, to learn from failing instead of like being afraid of judgment. Your judgment or other judgment is the same, and be too much like about I have to do it perfectly or it's not good. So I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm doing an exercise on that.
Yeah, that's good. I think the two things that helped me overcome this was first in coding, actually. I realized when I was working that if you're just waiting to make your product perfect before you put it out there, there is never, that time never comes. There is no perfect thing. There's no ideal. You can just keep
Yeah.
getting it better. I learned this process of iteration. So build something, put it out there, make mistakes, iterate quickly.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I learned. And also doing the YouTube thing. Like in the beginning, I would try to understand the topic or subject that I'm talking about as much as I can before I even entitled myself to be able to talk about it. But I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. So I was like, let's put it out there and let's see what happens. And when looking back from the first videos that I did to now, I can see the progress and the improvement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing as what you're doing with the music.
Yeah. And even in videos, when I see the first videos that I interviewed, man, it's pretty bad. I mean, there are many problems, and I knew like you know that kind of feeling when you do something, you look at it, and there are a lot of ideas and thoughts and voices that tells you, yeah, but this is not good or this is not done properly, and there's this problem, and people will think that, and I say, okay, doesn't matter. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to get feedback, and then I'm going to do in the next one, and all of that is fine. And getting that kind of used to be okay with something that is not totally done to your view is important.
Yeah, I agree. Talked about a lot of things I want to dive into. First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to your dad. Seems to be a very great supporter of your journey into
Yeah,
becoming a programmer. Noticing that you have this talent, supporting you into studying that. That's great to hear.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah,
Back then, in our generation, it doesn't happen quite often where parents pay attention to the kids' talents or support them in a specific way to say, okay, this kid is showing some interest here. Let's pursue this. Let's help them It's usually everybody just follows the same path. You know, you're from Syria. My background is from Iran. So, like, everybody follows to become a doctor or an engineer. That's just
Exactly.
what everybody does. And there's only also certain specific engineering. Not everything. It's just like mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. It's very interesting that your dad had that vision or had that understanding, which is, I think, rare for its time and the generation.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's he sets the bar very high. Now I have a son, I have children, and man, I cannot live up to that. I mean, how did he do that? Is like people were barely having TVs. Where did he get the computer from? How did he get to the idea that computers is something to try? A lot of people, all the family around us, that were saying like, "No, that will never work for Syria. Why you're doing that? You're wasting your child." Like all that kind of social pressure of like he should be a doctor, all these kind of things. But he had some intuition, something that made him believe that he should pursue that, and I admire that kind of risk taking, that courage, that yeah, made him follow my passion instead of his passion. Also, that's a point. As a parent, you always your first reaction is like you want your kids to be like you, yeah, like a better
Yeah.
version of you. And he was a financial engineer, pretty good actually, very known in the city and in the country. I was so bad at numbers. Maybe because of his pressure, but like anytime he will tell me this multiplied by this, I panic. I still panic actually at numbers, you know. And
Yeah.
imagine for a CEO, you have a lot of financials that you're dealing with and presenting to investors, to the companies. I made a big progress on that, but that part is not mine. No idea why. But he accepted that I'm not him, and he accepted that I'm something else. And already that point, like,
Yeah.
okay, he thought that I have to have my own path. I admire that. It's
Yeah.
extremely hard.
It's extremely hard. It's very admirable to basically kill your own dream for your children's dream to live,
Yes,
which is what needs to happen in parents. Oftentimes, you just project yourself into your children and their future. It's very hard to step aside and say, okay, instead of being disappointed that they're not what you thought they should be,
yeah,
actually be proud and support them in what they can be, which
exactly,
ended up for you to pursue this, find this passion, and build a company around it.
absolutely.
I think that's the best thing that could have happened to you. And
Yeah. So thank you for the reminder. Now, like, again, it's a refresher for me and about my children that I have to, um, for, like, help them with whatever is they are passionate about.
yeah, and I like that you said now that you have children, you realize some of the stuff that your parents did for you. You don't realize it until you have your own kids. You're like, how did they do this?
Absolutely.
Like in a lot of different ways. Like even dealing with the stresses, with the tiredness, with the lack of sleep. How did they, like, you could, when growing up, you think you can always be a better parent. Not until you are a parent yourself. You're like, okay, they did a better job than I'm doing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And there is no truth.
Yeah.
You're making decisions. You have no idea whether you're making good decisions or bad decisions. No one will be able to tell you that. You will never know whether you did good decisions or bad decisions, and you have to deal with the fact of there is no truth.
Yeah. Okay, so you got to France, had a hard time learning the language, but eventually you did. What happened next?
Yeah, so that was the first year. And then second year I had to find a job because I didn't have the financials. My parents didn't have the financials to support me in France. My dad told me, "Look, there's only this much that I can give you. After that it's going to be tough." So I knew that, and I knew he would support me, but like I knew that it would be hard for them. I had to find a job. In the first year, he told me like, slow down, don't work. Even afterwards, he told me like, just focus on studying. But I knew that I have to kind of start being independent. I was already 20 plus, and I knew that I had to be. So I looked for universities, and I looked for a job in the same time. And actually, I looked everywhere. I did a motivation letter for McDonald's. You know, we wrote it with my wife, and I spent so much time on it. Honestly, today, if I look at it, I would not hire me because it was like, so the letter that we wrote, it was like, yeah, I'm very passionate about working in McDonald's because I like to look at people and understand from the social interactions and blah blah blah. Why McDonald's will be interested in something like that? You know, you want someone to be productive, to do stuff. You want to come and observe people? No, of course they wouldn't hire me. So I don't know. It's probably destiny or something. But yeah, I didn't get any answer from anyone for getting a job, except one. Eventually, I got so I wasn't in Paris, and I got an answer from a company, a small agency in Paris, and the guy he told me. So he told me something very interesting. He told me like, so my name is Sadek, but it's Muhammad Sadek. And he told me I had a pile of CVs, and I look at your CV, and you know a lot of things. And then I saw your name, and he said that like that he thought to himself that the only reason why I'm not on a job is probably because of my name. And he was like, I would like to try that person. It's probably a good opportunity. According to him, he didn't regret the experience. So I always, recently I published even on LinkedIn. A lot of times we talk about racism and inequality, but we forget to mention the people that have this kind of leap of trust in people, and that they see strangers or difference as an opportunity rather than a problem. And that person, this company was one of these. They were like, oh, well, that person is different, and maybe that's interesting. So, it's important to recognize the people that see opportunity in differences, because they're not too many, and we have to celebrate that instead of like only speaking of the negative people that you know care too much about the differences between people. And actually, this is how I structured Prismic. It's a lot of it's multinational company. It's in France, but it's multinational. We have a lot of nationalities, like from South America, from North America, from Australia, from all around the world, Europe, whatever you want. And I'm proud of what we built. It's a multicultural. It works very well. There's a lot of smart people. That works very well. So yeah, that was something I felt sharing. But anyway, so I found a job at an agency to build websites, and I found a university as well, where I studied a master's in information systems for enterprise. That was the master's name. It's like a professional master. And that was good. It was in English, so I didn't have to speak French. That was good. And it was very informative. It's just like it had one subject. It was legal. So you had to study the legal aspect of information systems and all of that. And it was a lot of text. And it wasn't, I wasn't successful at it. I hated this topic, because legal texts tend to be very long and very subtle. There are a lot of subtleties inside them. And I got a very bad grade at it. Like I got 2 or something, like out of 20. But I was very happy that I ended the year and I don't have to look at legal anymore until I started Prismic. And building a company is a lot of legal. And people would present me with these huge legal documents for enterprise deals and all. And I was like, oh, this is chasing me forever. So, but, eventually I decided to get to it and understand it. And actually, it's not so different than programming. It's very much like programming. There are a lot of references. It's a framework. It's actually interesting if you go beyond the fact that it's very lengthy. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, that was one of the things.
All right. So I want to go back to the story you told about finding a job, and that probably, coming to France, to Paris, as a newcomer, as an immigrant with a Middle Eastern background, is not always easy to find jobs, to find yourself in that society. And I have had a similar experience here. I mean, when I came to Canada, it was a different time probably than you came. Canada is more multicultural than probably Paris was or France was 20 years ago. But what I liked about that story, Sadek, is, and this is my understanding from a couple of conversations that I had with you, you have a way of looking at the positive side of everything. You have this, like any conversation that I have had with you, when I listen to your take on it, it is always, I don't want to say like positive or optimistic in the sense that you're ignoring the negative, but it is an effort to make a better meaning out of it. Like your experience not finding a job because of your name could have been something very distressful, or something that you are just saying every time up until now as a negative thing, but you saw that that actually worked as an opportunity because you could stand out and you could get a job. There was that company that trusted or took a chance on you, and they're happy to do that. So I just wanted to share this. I don't know how much of it you also intentionally do, or is it the way that you have learned to look at the world, but you have that.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I mean, there's a part of training that you have to do with yourself to do that. I mean, like anyone living in this society, I have a lot of anxieties. A lot of what if, like, and actually, it's very quick. Like it cascades very quick into catastrophes inside my head. Like when I have something, it's like, oh, that could lead to this, to that, to that, to that, boom, 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 and then okay, well, it's the end of the world. So I do have that as well. It's not only the positive side, but like I know for sure that the way you look at things is judges on how you interact with them. Okay, so here is I was talking to a person. I was doing a badminton camp for training. I play badminton, and we have, I every year I do like 1 or 2 weeks of badminton camp. I don't do anything else. I do 7 hours per day of training. It's very
That's a
good.
lot.
It's a good break from everything else. It gives me into some kind of different day. So, and I met a person there that was not very, how to say, I don't know, he didn't have much of interactions with people from Middle Eastern or Arabic backgrounds, and he had some judgments about that and all. And it was fun to explore this topic with him. Like, fun is the right word. I mean, I was like, okay, what does that mean to you then? And I was exploring it. And he was telling me something like, I would never hire someone that is his name is Abdel. I mean, seriously, why did his parents call him Abdel? Because in France, like it has a connotation, and it's like, oh, they ruin the future of the person. And I don't look. You can see it from another perspective. If people are going to judge about hiring that person from his name, then probably he doesn't need them. If that's how they judge on the value, it's good. That's a good filter. Like that's working very well. That's probably something good they did to their son in that kind of perspective. Because why would I work with someone that judges on the name? Like maybe that person has a lot of value, and for your own company, I'm not saying for being good to the world, who cares, but like for your own company, maybe that's the person that's going to save you. Just give him a try, and maybe he will not. Then who cares about what his name is? It's just like what is the value behind, and
Yeah.
so you're doing him a favor by not hiring him, because it seems you're not the person that can profit from take advantage of his value. So, but I strongly believe that, you know if I come to like even the office or anything, and I look at what's not going well, then my mind is full of that, right? My mind will have all these negative things that are not great. And then all the stories that will be generated in my head will be about these negative things. So the thoughts are going to be negative. I will focus on these negative things and so on and so on. Whereas if you see, oh, well, that could be improved, okay? That could give us that very good outcome if we like. There's a time in Prismic like 5 years or 6 years ago where we started seeing some decline on word of mouth. Okay, people coming from word of mouth, and it's scary as a CEO to look at that. And it's like, okay, what does it mean exactly? Like, is it failure? Are we going to have enough clients? Like all these kind of questions come to your head. But it was, oh, well, this is great. That's where we can put our energy into then. And if we fix it, then everything is good. And when we worked on it and we fixed it and we changed it and when we got success. So depends how you want to look at things.
Yeah. I think you have a tendency to be solution oriented or forward thinking.
Yeah.
Even if there is a problem, you see the chance, the opportunity in it, or trying to find a solution for it. Because there's going to be problems, sure, and then you're going to fix them. You're going to find them. You're going to turn them into an opportunity. There's a potential in the word of mouth marketing or whatever content we put out there and it's declining. Okay, that is showing you where to just put your force on. So it's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, the worst is neutral. Neutral is nothing. Like I have no information. I'm going to sit and wait. How bad it is. Like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do. But it's like that's a very good information. It means I can put some energy into that.
Very nice framework of thinking about things, or having your own interpretation. Because I feel like, as we're going about our businesses, our lives are really the interpretation you have inside your head of the actual things that are happening, and it depends on you how you're interpreting things. And there's so many different ways to look at things. I mean, there are some stuff outside of our control. I'm not talking about those. There are some unfortunate things happening to people, but even in those instances, I think there are people who are responding differently to their circumstances and to their situations, and that really matters. From big things to small things to a simple conversation like this, or problems in a business. So moving on, you got hired by this company who took a chance on you as a Middle Eastern guy, and they were happy. Was it like
not right away? And there have been things on the way. I remember one of the projects. So they gave me this project, and it's the first kind of project they get. It's a bigger project than their habit. So I had to deliver it. It was actually building a CMS for a company, but building a CMS. So it's not using a CMS, or I guess I suggested that I build the CMS itself. So they were like, can you use WordPress or something? And I was like, no, I will build a CMS for that. It's a small case. I can do that. So I went into building it. I used XML and stuff and whatever. And back at the time, I didn't have enough professional experience. So they were really good. They were really patient with me. I mean, I have to admit it. So I went for 1 month. I showed them nothing. Zero. Every time they would ask me, I tell them, everything is on track. Don't worry. They was like, can you show us something? No. Like, I'm working on it. Don't worry. And then, 1 month after or something like that, I was like, ta-da! That's the whole project done. And I felt the panic of the person, the project manager. He was like, shit. Like, what if something I don't like? When you didn't ask me any questions. Like, I made the whole thing out of absolutely no feedback, no iteration, like, bam, go. So, well, eventually it worked well. We had to change a few things.
It's good that you didn't write the whole thing on a paper and be like,
that's the same
here's the
habit,
program.
That's probably the same habit. But of course, afterwards, I learned a lot about like iteration and getting feedback and all of that. But I didn't have any of that in the beginning, and it worked well for me. But yeah, that's one of the things that you learn from is like, okay, well, nice surprise, thank you very much, but like specifically, we don't want surprises. This is a company, so we don't want surprises. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So would you say that's the kind of birth of CMS and Prismic in your mind, thinking this is what I need
Yeah, well,
to
I
build?
didn't think of it that way, but you see, like, this is how things connect eventually in life. Like, I did that. I did a few projects like this where I was, okay, let's build a CMS for this case, let's do this and that. And then I went to another company and I built a framework, a web framework that was about asynchronous programming. Asynchronous programming didn't exist in programming languages yet. It was still early. So so we built a framework called the Play framework, and it was asynchronous programming in a web framework. So we want block threads for doing stuff. It's very much like what you have now with async in JavaScript and different frameworks. But it was early, and I got a lot of success. Actually, it went very popular, and that's what I got. A community and all. I even went to companies like Twitter, like LinkedIn. LinkedIn, they rebuilt their whole front end on top of Play Framework. So I went to consult for LinkedIn for quite some time, actually, because they were using the Play Framework. And that's when I learned a lot about you know startups and SaaS and business, and I was like, okay, open source is great, and I admire a lot the people that are working on it and that they succeed with it, but I wanted to build a business. And that's where I decided to stop with the open source and Play framework and build Prismic.
All right. So all of that experience actually was the ground foundation for now building a CMS with all of that experience and building a company around it. Now, so it's top of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to continue talking. I don't know how much time you have if you wanted to continue.
Well, yeah, I can continue a little bit. I just have to send a very quick message
Sure.
for a call that I was supposed to be in.
The conversation is so interesting. I don't want to stop it. We haven't even got to other stuff happening now. So we would have you on as much as we can, and then hopefully we can have you for maybe a second part.
Sure, let's do what we can do.
So while you're doing that, I just plug in something about Prismic. We have videos on the channel that I have done for anyone who's interested in learning about Prismic and using it in Next.js. I'll link to a video that Alex, the dev rel team member from Prismic, also did. He built a cool project with Next.js and some 3D animations in it, so it's pretty cool. There's a course that Prismic has on Prismic and Next.js. I'll link it in the description. I have done a live coding meetup with the folks at Prismic on their channel, so I'll link all of those content for anyone who's interested to see it. In one of the live coding examples that we did, we rebuilt Alicia Key's website using Prismic and some 3D animations, and it's really nice. So definitely check it out. There's going to be links in the description. All right, so now that we have you back,
Yeah.
so that was the groundwork, the foundation for building Prismic and building a CMS. How did it start? Like, how did it unfold? You thought, okay, I'm going to build a CMS. You now have these connections. You have the proof of concept of being able to build something that bigger companies use. So that gave you the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to now build something that I feel like companies would need to use. Why a CMS, first of all? Why did you think there's a need for that? And what was the market back then? Because right now, when I look at the CMS market, there's a lot of CMSs that you can use, and there's always a new one popping up every month. They message me to sponsor or create a video on, or I just come across them. How was the tech industry or the the market back then?
Yeah. So the only closest to a headless CMS that existed back then was a tool that was called Osmec. It disappeared. I mean, the company didn't make it, or I have no idea actually what happened, but they were the only ones. Because we had to search, right? At that point, we had to search. So the experience was that you are locked in a proprietary technology when you build your website if you want a backend. So you have to decide either you hard code everything, the content, you build your own CMS, or you use proprietary technology and templating systems to build your pages. That was not a good choice. The frameworks were very good. There were quite a few frameworks out there. We didn't have exactly React back then, but we had a few frameworks that were pretty promising on JavaScript, in Java, and in different languages. And it was like, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. Why just? And it was the era of think as an API, so whatever as an API. So was like, okay, well, why CMS cannot be just an API where you fetch your content and then you throw it at your code and you build a page with that? And so we had a case for a website, actually the website of the company that acquired the Play framework, the open source project, and they wanted to build their website. I was like, how would I build it? And didn't find many good solutions. And I was like, we should have something that is API based, so that we use a framework that any framework that we like. And then I convinced so I was working at an agency back then, and I convinced the agency CEO to give me resources to work on that. He accepted. He was like, okay, let's go for it. And we built in 6 months with another person. His name is Guillaume Ball. He was, he's a Superman in coding. Like the guy, he can do front end infrastructure, back end, anything. And so quickly, in 6 months, less than 6 months, he built a full product. I mean, we built it together. I think, I built a lot of the back end side, but the front end, it was him. And it was so good. Back at the time where we didn't have a lot of services for building an editor, a WYSIWYG editor, it was very manual process to build all of that. So he was really good at doing it. And then we got it out, and actually, right away we got traction. There were a very strong need of a tool like that. So it wasn't hard. It was pretty easy to get clients. It was small tickets in the beginning, so we didn't have big deals, but we had clear traction. And that's about the time that we started seeing other headless CMSs appearing. But we were first there. I mean, other than Osmec that I talked about, and that's a good lesson also, that being the first doesn't mean that you're the winner. I mean, they were the first, but where are they? So anyway, it made sense. We got it out in the market. We had immediate traction about it, and we kept developing it. But the thing is, like, oftentimes people think that of a CMS as a simple thing. It's a very, very profound technology. You need a lot to get it right. Of course, you need the editor. You need this to scale the API. You need an image API. So many systems that you need to build together to make and scale a CMS.
Absolutely. So, in that project started, like, what would you say? How many years ago was it? Like 15 years ago?
I would say 10.
10. That's very interesting to me and very shocking, because when I came to the industry, I'm not as experienced, or I don't have as many years as probably you have been in the industry. But when I came to the industry, like 5-6-ish years ago, I think like headless CMSs was like, I heard about headless CMSs a lot. Like, if there was a thing that everybody was talking about once Next.js became popular, this idea of frameworks and APIs, just consuming your content as an API, became so popular. Hearing that that was a thing back then, that you would get whatever as an API was a thing, was the era of
Yes.
offering your services as an API was a thing, and it was lacking in the content system. So you were like, okay, so why don't we offer content as an API?
Yes.
It's interesting to hear that that's at least a 10-year, 12-year thing in the process. And even somebody coming in new to this domain, they would hear about headless CMSs and they think, back then, usually content management system was WordPress.
Yeah.
And it was a couple thing with your backend, and you didn't have any headless thing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it takes a long time to get technology in the market at scale in a big way. But there are some trends that help, and there were a lot of investment. I mean, Prismic was a bootstrapped company, so we didn't use any external funding. We played it on our own. So what happened actually is we were at this agency, and then I had to speak with the CEO. I was like, "Look, man, we cannot develop this way. The goals of the agency are very different than the goals of Prismic, and so we have to get it into its own company and split." Now he was very understanding. Like we had a conflictual moment at some point about that, but then we met together, and he was okay. I'm going to help you with that, and that was one of the people that helped a lot. He believed in me. I mean, I don't know, like what did he see to believe in me? But he was like, okay, let's go, and we went, not me alone, but with a few people that were working on the project at that agency, and we spin off in 7 people actually. So we're 7 founders. It's the initial team, 7 founders that we went and we spin off and we created Prismic as a company and we developed it from there. But as I said, it was similar to the era of today. It reminds me very much of that. Today, the Gen AI and all the opportunities that are appearing from the availability of technology, it's very much that what we had back then. It's like there are a lot of opportunities coming from the fact of infrastructure as PaaS and IaaS and all these kind of things, very similar.
All right, so you split split Prismic or the CMS part out of that, which is again another great story of somebody believing in you or supporting you. Maybe you didn't have investors, but that CEO or the owner of the agency who took the chance and helped you to split this as a separate company, that is actually very helpful.
Yes.
I think your way of looking at things actually rewards you back with coming across these type of people who had great influences in your life and in your career at different points.
I think it's I learned there's something, and that's recently that I'm applying it. You should not force anything. You attract the people that are meant for you. You should not force something. If you force it, it's not going to work. There is a process, okay? So today, the way I am, the way I talk, the way I smile, everything that I do today will attract certain people to me. And that will get me to learn certain skills. And maybe at some point, eventually, there will be a new version. Well, it's always happening, but imagine there is a new, very different version of me. There are people that were before, attracted to me in any way that will not be anymore. And I will be kind of having new circles. And these new circles will be, very aligned with my new self, right? And that's very important. So you should not force in any way. One way of not letting the universe give you the opportunities is to be attached to the past, to be attached to a certain person, certain event, certain product, whatever it is. Then you're not letting the universe give you the opportunities. You insist on an outcome in a very concrete way, and that doesn't let you receive the opportunities. The other way is forcing to be something exactly with precision, and that's not how the universe works. You need to get to towards a direction and then receive the opportunities, because they not come exactly as you wanted. So did I think of myself being a CEO of a CMS company? Never. No. But I was following my lead, and I had a lot of passion about doing a lot of things, and things connected in a certain way, in an opportunity, and here we are, right? So yeah, I wouldn't say that it's just the way you are attract certain people that will give you certain success, and then you will develop new versions of you, and will get you new people that will get you to the next stage, and so on and so on.
It's interesting you said that if you don't have a fixated idea of the outcome. I usually say that the outcome or the result is something dynamic. It changes. If you just fix your mind on something specific, I remember I had a teacher back in the master's degree that I did. It was like it wasn't like, it was like a spiritual course or something that we were doing. And he was saying, you can plan or have a fixed mindset for Wednesday on Monday without knowing what happens on Tuesday, because things change. The outcome, the result is dynamic. It's you can put in an effort no matter what, and you're just going to, the path will well as you're walking on it, as Rumi says. So I like this way of thinking, that you're not very fixated on the result or a specific precision. Instead, you're just taking the lead and letting it unfold.
You need a direction, right? You need a direction, because that gets you not to go in loops or in circles. And that's not great, because then you're not making any progress. You need some kind of direction, but it has to be vague. It has to be a vision. A lot of startups talk about this idea of having a mission and a vision, and it sounds cheesy. And I always thought of it like, why? This is very cheesy. Like, why one sentence or whatever? But actually, it's very important, because that's what, all the company will look at and inspire from as a direction. And then it will allow them the flexibility to find from what the universe is giving us opportunities to go towards that kind of direction. So you have an opportunity to say, like, how can I seize this opportunity towards the direction that I set to myself?
So you have the direction, you have the vision, and you figure out the way to get there.
Yeah, you take the waves, right?
Yeah.
You ride the wave as long as it takes you to your direction, basically, towards somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So 7 people founding Prismic, finding some traction with it, getting some success. And when was that moment that you realized this was the right bet? You felt success?
Never. Like, maybe recently we're looking back and it's like, wow, we did a lot. But we were always about the next thing. We were not looking, oh, that's a success, or like, oh, that's a thing, or like, oh, headless CMS is a thing, or anything like that. No, we never stopped to realize. Actually, it's just recent. I was talking to my psychologue. I started seeing a psychologue like 2 years ago, something like that. And she made me realize that journey that I took, because I didn't realize it. Like, honestly, very honestly, I was so much into the thing that I didn't realize it. And by talking to her, I was like, yeah, well, I'm the person who came from Syria to be here leading this company, with so much revenue and super clients and great community. And I wasn't exactly aware of it. So, and I guess a lot of people end in this kind of way, because you're just chasing the next thing, you're chasing the next thing, and you never stop to say, like, wow, that was quite a journey.
That is interesting. In a small scale, it may happen to all of us that we don't realize or acknowledge how far we have come, because we're always chasing the next thing, and there's always new things to build, to learn, to grow. So you can be in this constant wheel that you're never, appreciating where you are or your success, and always chasing the next thing. So Where is Prismic now? How do you see it? What do you think about like the market now with all these different options? Where is it going? Where is Prismic going now? What do you see the future of Prismic? How do you see it, or the CMS or the industry as a whole?
Yeah, well, it's a big question. There are many things that I could say about that, but let me see how I can summarize it in a succinct way. So where the market is, there are several tools, a lot of tools actually today that have this API property. That's good. It's very mature. That the market decided that this is the way to go. You need to fetch content through an API so that it, no matter what framework you use, then you can use it. That's good. So we established our vision was right, and here we are. I think I see CMSs specializing in certain ways. You have some, like for instance, Sanity. They are very much about content is data, so like focusing on the data aspect of the content, and that's good. So it's very much an infrastructure, and a few other tools actually think about it in an infrastructure point of view. We have our different view, which we believe that content is experience. So it's more about giving an experience to marketing people so that they can produce experiences for the users instead of the data aspect. So we get away from the data aspect. So to give you very concrete examples, we're not so much about normalizing data. Like we don't absolutely have to make things not redundant or anything like that, but we focus way more on how can they experience pages as quickly as possible? How can they build reusability in their experience creation, in their content creation, so that they can go quicker to their goals? Basically, that's what we focus on. It's a different take, and actually, there's no winner. Like it's not one winner, because some organizations, they want an infrastructure and they will have their big development team to at least try to shape the experience as closely as what they want, and there's a lot of that. But what we did is that we specialize in websites. We say, like, all other cases we don't want. We are specializing in the websites, and that will make us create a much simpler experience, a better experience, basically, because we can make choices. And that's a choice that we made early on. So we had a lot of leads of clients that will, leads that of companies that wanted to buy Prismic for a good amount of money, but for something that is not a website, an intranet, a billboard, a whatever it is that they had. And we said, no, we refused the money. And we said, like, we are about websites. If you have a website, we're happy to serve you. But if something else, that's not what we were focusing on. That's a choice that made us take our own path. So I see a lot of specialization. They companies take bets on that. So that's how I see the market today. How is it evolving? Well, it's great. It's a great time now. Because of Gen AI, there are so many opportunities. 2 years ago, I would say the market was about optimization. How can you get a little bit better? How can you make the experience a little bit better, the scaling a little bit better, the performance, a little bit faster? These kind of optimization opportunities, which makes it very hard to make a differentiation. But today with Gen AI, it's so much horizon of opportunities that you can create with that. It's a great time to be a company, and to be a company where Gen AI can be practical. The application of Gen AI can be practical. So, yeah, we're enjoying this time. There's a lot that we're going through, and we're running, and I'm sure we're going to release things about that. But yeah, we're enjoying the time of abundant technology that we have with Gen AI today.
Interesting take on that. Usually people panic about the AI, and again, you're seeing the opportunity in it. So we went from, I like the fact that you mentioned that the CMS market is now matured and it's more so about a specialization. So some companies are data oriented, some companies like you are experience oriented, which make their tool better suitable for different use cases.
Yes.
In that the market is now matured with these all different options. So it's great for the consumer, for the developer, for the companies. And you're right in that we went from optimization era to just making things better. Even in the ecosystem that I'm involved in, React, Next.js, or front end frameworks, that has been the discourse. Optimization. How can you get things faster to the user by edge compute, runtimes, and different things that has evolved just in the past 2 years, or React server components, server rendering, and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned the Gen AI and the impact that it has in future. What do you see as an opportunity with the AI? Or I don't know how things are going to go. I remember I had a conversation with you about this. I really like to get your take on it.
Yeah, well, I can go for hours about that. To sum it up, I think we can say extreme personalization is one great opportunity, like very profound personalization. A lot of people complain about Gen AI, like if you ask it to do something from scratch, then it's not going to be up to, it's not going to give you good results in one shot. You have to iterate a lot. And even if you iterate a lot, you need, to get things right, you need at some point to edit it manually, right? Eventually. And that's fine. But if you get it from something that is already established and you ask it to personalize it a little bit, that's something you can do very well if it doesn't have to start from scratch. And in Prismic, we have this concept of slices. We have the concept of slices at the design system level, and we're working on having it at the content level. So shared slices. Like, imagine you have testimonials. Well, you don't have to write testimonials every time. You can have a library of testimonials. And for a given company, you have a library of, 20, 30 testimonials that you shaped from different conversations with your clients. And these become reusable. So anytime you're creating a new page, then you ask AI to choose one of these testimonials and get it there. So you're not asking AI to write everything from scratch. You give it some content bits and you tell it, go ahead. So in both cases, today, if we ask, so we have already an agent that creates pages with Prismic. You already have it in the interface. And the good thing about the agent is that it understands the concept of slices. So when it's shaping the page, it will make a kind of a strategic plan, or like a plan. So basically, it will say, well, to get this page for the goal that you told me, imagine you say, like, create a page to convert agencies better. You say, okay, to do that, I would like to start with a hero, and then I put some kind of testimonial, and then I will put a few facts, and then I will put a call to action, imagine. And then it says, like, okay, well, I got a slice in Prismic that is the hero slice. I'm going to use that and fill it with the proper information. And then I'm going to use the testimonial slice, and I will fill a few things, and so on and so on. So the fact that there is this system, a design system actually with slices, it makes sure that Gen AI is always going to get the brand right. It's not going to break the brand. It's not like you're asking ChatGPT to create a page and then you have no idea what the design is going to look like, and it's going to not be consistent. No, you have a design system that is defined with Prismic, and that's one of the few CMSs that have this property. So already we can produce something that is brand safe because of what we already have. Moreover, we can scale the content creation because you can share slices with their content and create a library that can be used by AI. So that's how we look at it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So it's in a sense where in like retrieval augmented generation, where you provide the model with specific data to use so that it doesn't just generate random things, you're giving it a structure, slices, design system to work within. So therefore, the result is going to be within these boundaries. So therefore, it will be always on
Exactly.
par.
Yes. So you tell it you can only use this framework to create your content, and you're going to guarantee results.
Yeah.
So we believe that in 5 years, websites are going to be autonomous mostly. So everything is automated like autonomous cars. You give it a strategy, a direction, and then it will generate pages, it will create them, it will optimize them on its own. Now that's a 5 years vision. But today the technology is ready for that. There is a lot of adoption problem, a lot of workflows that has to be defined to how would this work. But that's what we believe is going to. But for that to happen, the brand needs to be defined very clearly. You cannot just have Gen AI figure out LVMH or I don't know Dior or Netflix or Ted's brand. You cannot have that. You need to have it defined very strongly in a design system. That's what we have. You need to define the content and the voice and all of that for the website. But once you define that as an agency, then you're done, and everything else, the Gen AI will be able to create, suggest pages, and get them approved by the marketing team.
That's such an interesting concept. Autonomous websites where you set the strategy, you set the system, design system, and a tool like Prismic is going to generate the pages. It's going to then measure the performance in test, A/B test, and different pages, and just without any involvement, it can just iterate over a
Absolutely.
product to get to that final strategy or endpoint or mission.
Yes, yes, that's the idea, and again, it's like it's not rocket science. The technology of today already, the technology is available to do that.
Yeah. And would you say in that world, our job would be better as system thinkers, designers than actual coders?
So there is a talk that I did at the awards conference, and I was speaking to agency and creatives, and I was like, was trying to define what creativity is, because we talk a lot about creativity, and we believe that humans are great because of their creativity, and I disagree with that. I mean, drawing a hand of six fingers is very creative. We might not like that creativity, but it's creative. All what GPT is producing is very creative. It's not something that we thought of, and then it's producing it. That's creative. That's new creation, right? So it's pretty creative. And anyway, creative is all about inspiration. That's not the property. I mean, we tend to kind of attach to it and define ourselves with it, but that's not what matters. But our role, as agencies especially, but humans in general, we are the gatekeepers. You know, provided that AI doesn't is provided that AI is dependent on humans for getting its energy, right? So we are giving the money, we're giving the energy. If we switch off, there's no Gen AI. So we are the gatekeepers, right? So it has to be relevant to us. Technology has to be relevant to us. We have to understand it. We have to use it. It should serve us, the technology, whatever Gen AI is producing, which means we need a human that is the taste maker. So agencies are taste makers. There is this famous, I keep forgetting his name, famous music producer. I'm googling it now. Very famous. Give me play an instrument. I will get it very quickly. Always. But anyway, so I will get the name very quickly. But so he has an interview where they asked him, "Do you play any music instrument?" He said, "No." They said, "Do you know how to produce music?" He said, "Absolutely not." He's like, "Okay, what's your role?" And he was like, "My role is basically, I'm summing it up very quickly, is to
He has a good taste.
Set the taste. No, yeah. So not like for a certain community, he knows what works and what doesn't.
Yeah,
Like he can say for sure this is going to be good, and this is not going to make it.
I see.
And that is the tastemaker, and that's our our goal is to say like, okay, that is a good design for that brand, and that's not a good design. So Rick Rubin. So Rick Rubin is a very famous producer, and he doesn't play any instrument, he doesn't produce music. All what he does is say like, this will work for that community. There's a famous interview with him. So that's the idea, is like our role is not the creation. Our role is to say, this is good for that community, this is going to work because I belong to this community, I know it well.
Yeah, I I I actually have seen this guy in podcasts. I didn't know he's a music producer. I just searched him up. I looked at his face, and I have seen him in several podcasts talking about like spiritual things and meditation and maybe I never knew he was a music producer, but I get where you're coming from. So our role in future would be the design experts understand, or not even the design experts understanding if this is the right choice for this brand. It's just having a good taste. So people who have a better taste, better system design thinking or design will be probably using the tools better than everybody else, because the actual practical coding or
Yeah, yeah, like it's tastemaker. Like if a given brand comes and say like, we want to express that we are a security company, or we are an entertainment company, or this or that, and okay, who are the people? This is the community that we sell to. Oh, okay, so it's like more freestyle or more this or that, and then you do something, you experiment, you see what works, and then you say, okay, this is it. But the actual producing of that, if AI could take the process, go ahead. Give me a lot of suggestions, and I'm going to strategize on that and see what works. And that's fine. That's totally fine. So we need to get rid of our attachment to the creation part. If we have to do it, we will do it. But if we have tools that will do it, well, go ahead. I will enjoy very much being a tastemaker in that case.
so why can't AI be that part as well? So why can't
You need
AI
to
just
relate to him
design and test and try until it gets it right?
because you cannot relate to humans. They cannot relate to humans. They cannot experience like humans. It's only us that can relate to humans. We are the gatekeepers.
I can see what you mean by saying that we are the only kind of our own species, so we have the ultimate understanding of humans. But what I'm saying is, like, if you are having an AI system understanding code through tests and trials and learning to get it right, well, it can understand humans' tastes because we have patterns of behavior and tendencies that we share. It's common between humans. So if the AI is creating and testing and trying until it gets the voice of that brand, it
Yeah,
doesn't really matter if it understands the human experience. It just knows what we like, what we don't.
trends change very quickly. Like in a given community, like for instance, if you look at music, there's something that is trendy this year that is not the same that was the case 1 year before, right? There's a trend. And it comes from a lot of different, a lot of different things that happen, right? Like at some point you will get the 90s very, very famous, the music of the 90s, very, very popular. And you would wonder, why now? And either there is someone that made a remix of a song and he brought people back to that era, or guess what? Well, the parents that were in the 90s, now they have kids that are 20 years old, and these are the people that go to nightclubs, and these people enjoy the music of their parents, or they heard it and they know about it because they heard it when they were kids. whatever other thing that happened in the world that makes the 90s music popular today, or in a certain year. Things change a lot very quickly. So to have a model that is trained to be able to predict human behavior in that quickly, already the weather is not, predictable. With all the technology that we have, we still cannot predict the weather. Maybe it will progress, but you can imagine. Can you imagine the specialization of every single industry, every single community? How much you need to train on how much? Of course, it can be helpful, but only a human being can relate to a human being. That's the idea of being relatable. That's why these kind of things cannot be automated. Eventually, can I know how a cat feels? No. I can observe cats. I can think how do they look from the inside. How do they experience stuff? No idea.
Yeah. I think what you said, like in that there's a lot of different contexts. Like even the human experience is different for you in where you grew up, to me, to somebody else in France, different generations. So it's very hard to have so many different models that understand those contexts, or there's so much narrow niche specialized so that they can talk relevant to a 40-year-old Syrian with Syrian background that lives in Paris to know exactly what your experience is. So I get that it's very hard to replicate that experience. So I want to,
Helped. Yeah, maybe we can be helped with tools, with
yeah,
inspiration. But eventually, as a human being belonging to that community or relating to that community, I can say this has a high probability of success.
yeah,
I feel it. I kind of feel it.
yeah,
Like look at the movies done by Netflix, the recent ones. They're very industrials. They don't. People say that they don't have the soul of it. Like it's a very strong production. It's a lot of means, great actors, great script writers, but there's no soul to it.
yeah,
Doesn't mean anything. Soul. What does it mean? Like
yeah,
movies don't have soul, but it's that kind of artistic part that is. What does it mean artistic? It's like it relates to us. We feel
yeah,
for it. We connect to it from our past experiences.
yeah. I agree. It's very tangible what you're saying. You can feel it. The tools can replace a lot of things, but that human aspect or soul aspect of it that makes us feel is hardly replicated or understood by a machine.
Yes, they cannot relate to our experience.
So if somebody walks up to you and they are new to this industry and they want to use your experience and what you understand to know what to pursue, where to go from here, what would you recommend?
In terms of what? In which direction you
Let's
mean?
say they're in tech, they they are debating what to do, what not to do, what to focus on.
Okay.
What would you say to that person?
Start somewhere, whatever you want. It's just so much important. We had this, I call it sickness in Prismic, that we think too much, and I had to get rid of it. To get rid of it, it was like, I don't care, just let's get more information. We're great at thinking. I know it. There's no risk that we're not going to think enough. There's no way that we're risking that, because that's our nature. That's how I hire people. I hire people that are like me, and I like to think a lot about things. So, but the thing that we have to make sure is that we're receiving, that we're not staying in our heads. We're receiving. We're receiving the word. We need to receive the word as much as possible. So to receive the word, you need to get there. You need to start. You need to fail. Just anything that you're interested in. It might not, because someone was telling me. I mean, I have a friend that was telling me, yeah, well, she was learning about computer science and programming, and she was like, that might be useful because there is a lot of money in it, and so and I was like, no, like I wouldn't do it that way. Just go for something that you're passionate about. Go for something you really like, because you're going to spend so much hours doing it that you will learn a lot. And eventually you might abandon it once you're tired of it, and that's totally fine. And then you will jump into the new thing that excites you. And eventually, all together, they will make something coherent. And that will be your future. So don't hesitate to jump. Don't hesitate when you're tired, when you cannot take it anymore, change. But as long as you like it, just do it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And then eventually, like to give you an analogy to that, so I play badminton. I want to improve in badminton. It's a sport I really like. But today I'm playing video games. I'm playing FIFA, and is it relevant to badminton? Well, not directly, but it trains a lot your reactiveness and your metricity of your fingers, actually, quite a bit. That reaction, that connection, and it serves a lot. So what I mean is, like, everything eventually will connect in a certain way. Follow your passion and will get you there in that kind of Gen AI world, doing something at least. Because when you read abstractly, you don't learn as much. But when you're onto it, when you get your result out there, when you get feedback about what you're doing, then you will learn much faster. So get there, start anything, be relevant. That's what matters, because this is the kind of era, by only simply being relevant, you're going to do something great just by being relevant. It's very similar to the SaaS era, where you didn't have to be so good to succeed, actually. You needed just to be relevant. And it's the same. The opportunity space is so big that in 2-3 years, people that are still relevant are going to have big opportunities. Because there are a lot of people that are not going to be relevant.
That's by far the greatest advice I heard about following or the way to the future, in that I understood it this way. There is no one single path. Just to start somewhere in what passion you have, what interests you, and let the way unfold. Even if you got tired of what that is not meant for you, but it may come together at a different point. But just keep iterating, keep following this path, and it would unfold as you are walking. So just keep walking, or make that jump, start, and it will take you.
Absolutely. Like, if you look at where I started, the agency was a very small agency, and some people in my university were like, "Oh, well, that's not a great job. It's a very small agency, and it's basically nothing." But look, it inspired me to build a company.
Yeah.
It was the right thing for me. But I didn't think about it back then. I was like, maybe they're right. And I was paid very little back then. But look how it folded up. So, yeah, I mean, there is something out there for you, because eventually you will attract the right thing to you, and it will bring you success. Just don't resist. Don't attach. Don't resist opportunities. Take, receive, and adapt with that. And you will be relevant, and you will get success.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Sadek. I want to end the conversation with that. Thank you very much for taking the extension to continue the conversation with me. I really enjoyed talking to you. It can go for hours and hours. Thank you.
Yes.
Very
Thank
much.
you very much. And it was very interesting talking to you as well.
Beautiful. So we're going to observe how Prismic evolves, and the tools that it's going to bring us, and the way that you're going to shape the future of your company. Hopefully, we're going to catch up sometime later this year again to see how AI has changed, or the company has changed. I'm going to include links in the description, folks, for anyone who wants to connect with Sadek over on Twitter. We're going to include the links for the company, for the YouTube, and the videos that I mentioned for anyone who's interested. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you very much, Sadek, again, for joining me in this conversation.
Thank you very much, Hamid.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.